This is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Today we're going to be working with a thin twin laundry center on accessing the washer components. These are such big machines that you don't really want to tilt them back. There's a way to pull out the washer components so they're really easy to work on. So first thing we got to make sure, for safety's sake, we unplug the machine. And next thing is we'll take off this front panel. It's already been removed right here, but there's just 3 screws holding it in. Here's the front panel. So we get that out of the way. Then we have some brass clips here we have to pry up. We just use a standard head screwdriver, push in and push back, and that'll pop up that clip. And then on the other side, it's a little hard to get to, so I don't use a screwdriver. I just use a little piece of metal to pull that clip back. And then I can slide the whole front panel forward. So I remove those clips. I grab the front panel, pull it toward me, and it'll tend to catch on part of the fill system. So I'm going to open up the lid, reach back and push down on this fill part, spring-loaded. That allows me then to pull back further on the lid and remove it. Already removed this nut that holds the spin basket in place. Now I'm going to remove the front panel. First I remove this screw that holds the support bar, and once this screw is removed, I just push the bar back out of the way. And then I'm going to remove a couple of screws in the front panel. One here on the left side and one on the right side. I'm just going to push the basket out of the way so I can get to the screw. Here's the other side. And now this is underneath the machine with the panel removed. I've also already removed the motor. But I'm going to just now remove these 2 1/2-inch bolts, and they're what's holding the washer assembly into the laundry center. So we're just going to remove those, and then we can actually slide the whole washing chassis out so we can access on all the washer components pretty easily. If the washer's still connected to the laundry center, it's pretty impossible to get out the components. I'm just going to lift up on that drain tube, and then I'll pull out the air pressure tube, which is just connected here in the back. Just pull it straight up. We've already got our electrical connected from the motor, so now we can pull the whole chassis forward, and that will allow us to easily remove the spin basket or whatever other things you need to do. So to get this ring off, I'm just going to push down on the top to take the pressure off of these clips, and then I'll pull out on the clips. You got to go all the way around. But now that the chassis is pulled forward, it's really easy to get to these different parts. So just push down to take the pressure off and then pull back on the clip. We can just pull that out, and then you can just pull the spin basket out at this point. So that's how we access these components, and it's actually pretty easy to do. Now we can just lift out the spin basket, and then we want to clean up this rubber seal. You can just use a paper towel that's moist. You're going to get all the crud and accumulated detergent off of the rubber seal. And then the area below that, it's good to clean too, but mainly this area where we have this seal is important so it stays watertight. Just removing some more of the stuff down here. A lot of it will just go down the drain, but it's good to remove it. So now to get the basket drive out, we just turn to the left and we can pull it straight out. I tilted the machine back too, so it's easier to get this out. And then here we're just putting the new basket drive in. Just push it in and then twist to the right, push it in as far as it'll go, and you're all set. Now we want to get this brake lever pointed toward the 12 o'clock position and then the spring on the clutch down at the 6 o'clock position so they won't bump into each other when we put the transmission and motor assembly back in. So we're getting those back in, making sure that it sits all the way in, and then we'll put in those 3 bolts to hold it in. I'm going to tighten them up. I'm going to be a little bit careful here that we don't tighten it to a point where it can break the bolt, because sometimes these get corroded with some rust and they're not as strong. So you just want to get it tight and then turn it a little bit further so it's snug. So we'll get these 3 bolts in there tight. 1, 2, 3. You get this one tight. And again, this is pretty easy to do because we tilted the machine back. So we're getting the motor coupler hooked up correctly. Got the motor in position. We're going to put on these clips to hold it in. I'll put in this retaining screw to get that tight to hold the clip in position. Some of these don't have these little bolts to hold it in. That's okay. Here is our water pump. We got that in position. We're putting the clips back on to hold it. These direct drive washers are so modular, easy to put pieces back in. Here's our drive block. Putting that back down onto over, and then we got to make sure it lines up these 2 notches with the 2 parts of the drive, and then we'll put the spin basket back on, and then we're going to put the nut back on to hold everything in position. We got to get it pretty tight. We'll spin it on by hand first, then we'll use our special tool to get it tight. We're going to be going clockwise. So we just got to get this fairly tight, and then we'll use a hammer here at the end just to knock it in, make sure it's really seated in. Okay, we're putting our agitator back in, so we're just going to push it down, and then want to get it pushed down until it seats and won't go any further, and we'll just tighten up this bolt. Get that tight. We'll put on the watertight seal, and then put on the dispenser cap. Just pop that on. Then we're going to put our cover back on, the tub cover. And just got to make sure these parts clip over. The idea is to push down on the cover and then put the clips back on all the way around. So we got that done. Got the motor in, pushing the chassis all the way back in now so that it lines up. Make sure there's nothing behind it that would stop its movement. Putting the pressure tube back in, that's very important. Back through its holder and then all the way down onto the tub connector. If that wasn't there or it fell off, then the tub would continue filling and it would overflow. So we got to make sure that's back on there tight. That's located in the back right section of the tub. So now we got them lined up. We're going to put the 1/2-inch bolts back in, get those tight. It's a pretty cool system on the Thin Twin where you can just undo these 2 bolts and then you can pull the washer mechanism out and you can do all kinds of repairs. You could switch out the motor, switch out the motor coupler, switch out the basket drive. So now we're putting the wire retainer back in to the transmission, putting our electrical connectors back onto the capacitor, and then the wiring connections for the motor. Want to make sure these are all seated on nice and tight. Got that done. We're going to look back and make sure that the drain tube is in its holder. That's done. We should be ready now to put the front panel back on. We got our front panel in position. We're going to put in the 2 retaining bolts to hold it. Get those nice and tight. I usually push the basket out of the way a little bit so I can get my driver in there. Now I'm putting this cross brace back into position, and I'm going to put the 1/4 inch bolt back in. Now we're putting the top panel back in. We're going to slide it into position. Got to make sure these plastic guides line up with the sheet metal. And then we usually have to reach in, open up the lid, reach in and push down on, I guess that slid in pretty good. So now we're going to put the brass clips back in, and now we're just showing that it's back working again. Got our normal spin function. Got everything hooked back up. We can put our front panel back on, and we are done. Thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe to our channel when you get a chance. Thank you.